Well, I said I'd do it, didn't I? The Transformers Annual 1986, but you just didn't believe someone could be so brave. This is half your problem, you know that, and stick around with the rest of the video, you'll find out the other half. This is the second Transformers Annual, and I would have been around 4.5 when I got this for Christmas, a little more able to pass what was happening, but nowhere near prepared for some of the harrowing imagery that would haunt me well into my adulthood. I think I'm maybe a solid 30% confident I won this annual as a runner-up prize in a competition on UK TV show Get Fresh. Maybe? Let me know if you know more about this competition, for some reason it's important to me. Anyway, this has been Brain Tape since young times, and I'm happy to share it with all of you. Yes, even you. The cover, it's just really strong, iconic, bright, well rendered. One of those things where you go, how can Optimus Prime be there and be there at the same time? But if that bothers you, you're in the wrong hobby. Inside is probably my favourite Transformers artwork of all time. Look at this, just airbrushed within an inch of their lives. The Dinobots look so effortlessly cool. I would love this on the side of a van, or failing that, a huge poster. Once again, this book was not my original growing up, so I have been usurped on this page by one Sam Aid. Get in touch if you're watching, Sam. This annual is a lot more text heavy than the previous one, with this story recapping the Autobot Decepticon war so far. There's some plot about a kid hacking into the Decepticons' computer system. Occasionally it will tell you to turn to a later page to access a data file for more context, which feels like a bit like, like those choose your own adventure books, so high points from me. It goes on a bit, this, honestly, let me tell you, it's interesting though. It's about Transformers, which to be honest, I like. Oh, thank God we finally get to some comic pages. Our first story, To a Power Unknown, is our first real taste of the creators not giving a fuck about the feelings of children. The Autobots are having a fantastic time hanging around with some humans when they're struck by a mysterious force, making them dickheads of the highest order. And you've no idea how shocking this was for me to see my biological dad, Optimus Prime, act this way. Not just in a cold-hearted machine-like way, but revelling in the destruction. No, I did not like that at all. Elsewhere, the Decepticons get hit with the same personality juice, and suddenly they're a lovely bunch. There's a nice exchange where Megatron and Shockwave complement each other's leadership skills. We learn that some egghead has created a defense system designed to reverse the instructions given to any weapon or missile system launched at their allies, returning them to sender. That's what's causing the Transformers' personalities to be reversed. Ah, right. Okay, now I get it. There's a lot of back and forth, and while the art is pretty great overall, the story meanders, and even this weird cameo from soap opera Coronation Street can't help. For my little mind though, there was so much to pore over, tons of cute details to obsess over. Look at this part at the end where the Autobots are taking Optimus up the road. Is he waving at that family? Or at me? Probably me. Whew, I never thought I'd be happy to see a big page of text, but this data file for Optimus Prime is nice and rewarding. He's good, isn't he? I like him. Now we have our second prose adventure, The Return of the Transformers. If you watched the 1985 annual review, you'll remember this wee sad sack called Danny. He's developed quite the obsession with Transformers since his last altercation with them, and to take his mind off things, his mum has taken him to the most interesting location that all kids want to read about, a sleepy tourist town during off-season. But wouldn't you know it, the Transformers show up and give Danny enough grief that he chucks a book in the water. We've all been there. Now, are you ready for a quiz that will rock your little mind? This is a proper devious quiz. This is Nick from Toy Foo level. This is Chris McFeely level. Oh, it's not that bad, maybe, but there's still a lot of convoluted scoring systems and progressively tougher questions as you progress. I had a hard time with some of them. That's only because I have other things going on in my life. Next up is the answers page, and Optimus Prime seems to have enjoyed his robotic ice cream. Next up, we've got a data file from Megatron, and oh pal, what's the matter? Are you alright? God, he looks like he found out he wasn't invited to Soundwave's stag do. We've got another tech story here, but it's State Games. Maybe the annual story. The history of Cybertron laid bare with their gladiatorial games as the focus. It was such a cool thing to see back then. Megatron, before he was Megatron, Sunstreaker taking it tight in the centre of the Colosseum. Wonderful. We get some pretty cool artwork throughout. In particular, this image just captured my imagination as a kid. The composition, the angle, the movement there, it's perfect. State Games is pretty great. There's a lot in there that informed fiction decades later, so it's worth reading for sure. Next up is Nightmare Fuel of the highest order, and for me it's the reason to read this annual. Victory is an absolute nightmare of a comic story with art by the greatest of all time, Jeff Sr. Quite possibly the first time in my life my tiny mind had to process the image of someone being split down the middle with a big sword. You always remember your first. Horrifying. So much to enjoy and to be indelibly linked to my nightmares. Grimlock being blown to bits by a devious Starscream using Megatron's fusion cannon. Swoop defeating Soundwave only to have the Decepticon blow them both up as a huge prank. And perhaps the most terrifying of all, poor Sludge. The poor fella, he just wants to hang out with his golden human, Joy Meadows, then she rips off her skin and blasts him to shit. Honestly, such a shocker for me back then. I had no sense of foreshadowing. I think it speaks volumes. My biggest fears growing up were Joy Meadows, the robot lady from Superman 3, Zelda from Terrahawks, and Hunger the Harpy from She-Ra. If you're an evil robot or a twisted crone, or even just a woman, you would have been terrifying to me in 1986. Snarl gets battered by a decapitated Guardian, and Slug drowns in a big pool of tar. Jeez, oh folks! We learn that this is all happening in the Dinobots' minds as they exist in a coma-like state at Autobot HQ. They have to keep fighting to break free and to wake up, or they could eventually burn themselves out and die. And we end on this frankly incredible illustration and the line, "Give them victory or give them death." I was 4. Next up is a final text story with some decent enough artwork. I do like the clouds here. Jazz shags ass to Alaska to help Hoist, who has been tracking the Constructicons. Bet you can't wait to see the Constructicons or Devastator, eh? Well, that's hard bananas, pal. They don't show up in the images. It's fine. It's nice. It's a nice way to cool down after reading Victory. Last up, we've got these Who's Who guides for all the Decepticons, kinda, and all the Autobots on the next page, kinda. Honestly, not going out with a bang here, but again, my 4-year-old self would pore over these, read them over and over. I still couldn't remember all the Constructicons' names after all this time though. And that's it. That's the 1986 Transformers Annual, easily the one I have the most nostalgia for, both good and bad. And I honestly think a lot of what we've seen helped to contribute to my love of horror in comics and of course my healthy respect for powerful women. It really is worth your time. And look, I don't deal in vagaries or contradict myself on this channel, so I can say easily, if I were recommending one Transformers Annual, this would probably be it. It doesn't have as much fun stuff as the last one, but there's still plenty there that appears relevant today. Okay, so thank you for watching. Next up is 1987, and let me tell you, if I could recommend just one annual, that would probably be it.